Ladies and gentlemen, K Kim here. Welcome to the daily update. Hope you guys had a good weekend, July 4th weekend. And let's try to figure out what happened today. S&P 500 is up. The broad market is up actually. Pretty decent size here. S&P is up about 1.5%. I think NASDAQ did a little more. Dow, Russell, and the banks, they're all kind of in that vicinity, maybe a little less than S&P, but all the broad market is up today. Look like we gapped up today. As you can see, that's the first hour, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth hour. So you can see that we gapped up, pretty much moved sideways all day, right? So you can see second hour, we trying to continue higher. Was not able to continue to the third hour. We pulled back a little bit on the third hour. Fourth hour, we kind of hung around. Fifth hour, we pulled back a little bit. And then sixth hour, we pushed back up to near the high. So obviously, with today's move, buyers have accomplished another constructive cultivation. So let me explain to you why. And if you watch my weekend video, the market update video, I've explained what happened here, right? And it wasn't a huge day on Friday, right? It was only about 0.5% up day, but we talked about how much the buyers have accomplished just by getting up and hitting this near highs here. Remember we talked about that? And with that, we saw another gap up. This is something that we did talk about. I've actually talked about potentially gapping up above 318, 19 or so. In a rare case, we did see a gap up. It wasn't as quite high. But here, let me tell you something what happened today. Market is up about 1.5%, right? And that's a decent size. But I'm going to explain to you why today's move was crucial for the buyers. Right? I'm going to just explain to you in this video right now. First of all, you notice that I don't have the boxy here anymore, right? You've seen some box before in my previous videos, annotating that this was what? A island top. And you remember this gap area was in purple. You've noticed that in this video, now I've changed it into like a light bluish type. It's not in purple anymore. Why? Because despite the fact that buyers were not able to fill this gap entirely today, we actually feel just the partial of it, which I've tweeted out earlier today. Even though the gap still remains open, right? The threat, that island top reversal threat, has been neutralized as of today. Why? Because the only way this gap it's going to be a island top was, remember there's a gap up, there's a big gap up there, and then there's a big gap down there. Do you see it? Right? That's what you call a island top. That's a gap up, that's a gap down, which that makes this an island, correct? Yes. So what happened was the price gapped up and we fluctuated. And do you see that the price filled this gap now with this recent move? Though the gap started from here and then it gapped down here. But remember, the only way this can become an island top is when it gaps below the previous gap up. Do you know what I mean? This is a previous gap up, and then it gapped down below it. And that island reversal gap started from this gap right here, which is that 317-ish area, right? This is where that island gap came about right here. That square right there, right? By the price, by the buyers bringing up the price to 317 today, we've completely nullified this island gap. So now, only gap we're dealing with, obviously the gap has not been filled completely. And that's going to give just a little bit bearish connotation. It would have been better if the gap was filled entirely, right? The entirety of it. It would have been better. But this is better than nothing. And there's so much going on. I'm going to explain to you more. But first of all, just neutralizing that island top, that's a huge success from the buyers. Because that's what made things very, very hectic in the last month or so. Right? Buyer trying to get up, nope. 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 Right? And we've been talking about this, how this market is going to get into a hectic environment ever since we found out that this island reversal was open, and we talked about back in what? Early June, right? We talked about as long as that gap remains open, we're gonna be in a hectic environment. And indeed, we were in a hectic environment for about a month, right? It was difficult for both bulls and bears, right? Because bulls were fighting to absorb the volatility, which we talked about yesterday, right? So with that move, we no longer, buyers don't have to deal with island top reversal selling pressure any longer. Now that island gap turned it into a just normal down gap, and slightly it's still open. That's the first thing what the buyers did right today, and that's a huge success. Looking at things midterm. Another thing is we have, let me go to line chart here real quick. It's a subtle move, right? But can we agree that this high is now higher than this high? Can we agree with that assessment, right? That high is higher than that high in mid-June. See, what is the definition of downtrend? It's lower highs and lower lows, right? We had lower highs, but we never really did have a lower lows because we talked about how this is not a lower low, that's an equal low. So we were seeing some bearish selling pressure made things hectic in the last month or so, but bears were not truly establishing a downtrend in the midterm. This is all, I'm just recapping everything, right? We've been talking about this. This isn't new for us. So we knew that bears needed to do more before they can establish actual downtrend. They needed a lower low. Well, they didn't have that. They got close to 300. This is a reason why that I was harping on the fact that you want to do your analysis based on what you see in front of you, never what you think it should happen, right? Never why the market shouldn't be up here, but always accept the fact that market is up here at 317, right? Even when we're at 300, if you go back and check my analysis back in late June, we talked about in the midterm and the long term, we have to give benefit of the doubt to the buyers. I'm not sure, this is what I was saying back in late June, I'm not sure if this is going to come down, make lower low. If they do, and at that time, we will have to adjust our stance when it comes to the market in the midterm. But until we see that, we have to give this market benefit of the doubt to the buyers in the long term. You guys remember, right? So this nuance, this is a subtlety that we saw today, right? That's a higher high. We no longer have lower highs any longer because of today's cultivation, right? What does that mean though? Does that mean because we got a higher high, this thing is gonna just go straight up and never pull back? No, that's not what it means. It means buyers are slowly cultivating a uptrend. We were trendless in the last month or so. Again, we've been talking about this. We came to a conclusion that in the midterm, right? We've been categorizing this market as what? Neutral. What does that mean? It means we don't have a trend in the midterm. In the short term, we were some downtrends, were some uptrends, some downtrends, some uptrends. So in the short term, sentiment changed back and forth quite a bit. But in the midterm, we've been in neutral stance for how long now? Ever since this thing gapped down, right? As of today, with this move, my stance in the market in a neutral, in the midterm is now neutral to bullish. The reason why I'm still giving it kind of neutral, not fully on bullish in the midterm, is for the fact that we still have this gap remains open. That's why, right? But remember, it was a neutral for a while. And then somewhere in this vicinity, we talked about how neutral to hectic environment. But I never wanted to give neutral to bearish, just until I see what happens at this vicinity. That was a battleground. Neutral to hectic in the midterm, right? And then you see pretty much market got up higher. And we saw that early signal when my oscillator threw that bullish divergence, which we talked about in late June. After that, market did see some up and down in fluctuations because obviously market is not going to go straight up, but had a very, very nice run in the last 6-7 trading sessions here. So as of today, benefit of the doubt goes to the buyers in the short term, still above my short-term moving average. In the midterm, I am labeling this market, as I said just earlier, neutral to bullish. Neutral to bullish just because we have not yet completely filled this gap here. Once this gap gets filled, I will categorize the market as bullish in the midterm. Obviously, in the long term, we're bullish, right? We've never changed our long-term stance, right? If you've been watching my video every single day, we've never switched our stance in the market since early April, ever since when my long-term moving average was rising. Not once did I label this market long-term bearish. Right? Go back and check. There wasn't a day that I labeled, even on this day right here back in May 15th, even on this day in June 12th, even on this day in June 29th. These lows, we were still categorizing this market as bullish in the long term. Midterm maybe neutral, short term bearish. Because short term obviously going to change back and forth quite a bit in the short term. Midterm neutral, midterm neutral, midterm neutral, right? Long-term bullish, long-term bullish, long-term bullish. And so long-term is bullish still. But now with that cultivation of higher high for the first time ever since we saw that move, that's a huge cultivation there. What that means is even if we do pull back, market is going to pull back to cultivate higher low. Even if we see from here to going back down to maybe 310, let's say we see that this week. In the midterm stance, will still be bullish, neutral to bullish if we don't fill this gap, right? As my midterm moving average is still rising higher, and we have that move. any kind of pullback is market is pulling back to cultivate what? Higher low. Because we actually don't have any kind of decent size higher low yet. We got the high, higher high, where is higher low, right? And as of today, we don't know. Are we gonna make the higher low from maybe after tagging 320 and then 314 and then go up here? Or are we gonna pull back from here? Or are we gonna go all the way to 325, 4, and then pull back and then do that? See, that we don't know. But we can kind of see what's going on, what we can expect going into tomorrow, because remember, every single day this market is going to give us piece of information, and then we can able to use that information and trying to forecast what we may be facing going forward today and tomorrow and next day. So let's kind of check out that oscillator here real quick, see if buyers are getting tired yet. So we saw a little bit of whipsawing action here, some up and down, I think because of the fourth and fifth hour slight pullback there that made the oscillator see a little, because we did see a cross and then looked like it's gonna cross back down, but then we actually crossed up towards the end of the day. So you can see here where we are actually, they're starting to separate. So here's a few things I can tell you about this. Right now, and we've anticipated this, right? We've anticipated the fact that how the how the oscillator got above this falling resistance, and it's going to pull back to retest it as a new support before going back up. And this is what we talked about over the weekend, and where this market could see another whoomp of a move, and that's what happened today. And with today's move, I mean, is buyers getting tired now? According to my oscillator, we still got little bit of room left there. Little bit of room left there. The problem is not, I don't think at this point, the problem is not so much as are the buyers getting tired? Is this overbought? That's not the problem. Because buyers do have just a little bit more room. Only problem is, are the buyers going to maximize this, utilize this? Because, I mean, that right there, that could be, tomorrow. If we see another bullish move tomorrow, that's a plenty of room there. There's a plenty of room there. There's a plenty of room there for buyers to actually bring this up to like 323, even 325. So what is standing in the way of the buyers? Well, this gap. So here's what I think potentially could happen tomorrow. If we actually just continue higher tomorrow and fill this gap, that's going to act as resistance, and we are going to see a pullback. And at that point, we may see this thing continue to rise higher and then see a pullback. And if we do see something like that, we may see a bearish divergence on my oscillator, right? That's something like this right here. You see that higher, you see that right there, higher high, lower high, right? And then that's what I call oscillator double top. We might have oscillator double top along with potentially bearish divergence, right? Potential. And we won't know until we see it. We need the market to tell us that we may be seeing something like that. We can't just project that and say that's what's going to happen. We can't say that. The market will give us that information. So we'll look at it again tomorrow and next day. But for now, I'm just giving you a potential scenario. Best case scenario for the buyers to maximize what little energy they might have left. Because they do have that energy, some left here. There's that space there. They can bring it up if they want to. If they truly want to maximize that, truly want to utilize that little bit of energy that they might have left, it's gapping it up. Gapping it up, and not, because that's the resistance right here. 318, 319 is resistance. We're gonna see a pullback if the market goes up and feels just if market just goes up and just feel that, market will pull back. So sometimes market don't want to deal with certain resistance area, just like what we saw today. I mean, we're trading at 312 on Friday, but there are many resistance here. You see, there are many, and there's this gap area. There's maybe some downtrend. horizontal resistance area. There was this gap area right here. And so what did the market do? Just gapped it over. If buyers gap it over one more time above 318, and that's not a big gap up, very much doable. Just 0.8, 0.7% gap up, which is very much doable. Like this morning's gap up was what? Yeah, it was like 1.2, 1.1% gap up. So if we see a gap up, we'll just jump over it and it will go after about 323 at the time if we do see a gap up. And then fill this gap, at least 322. By the time this thing gets up there, you're gonna see this oscillator getting back up and then hitting that overbought area, throw that double top, and then we will see a pullback at the time. That would be the best case scenario for the buyers. Fill that gap, gap it up, 319, gap back up to 323, and then see a pullback, cultivate higher low, and then possibly going back up to go after 333. With that, you're gonna see this oscillator coming back down. That's best case scenario for the buyers. For the bears, if we do see some shenanigan gap down or early trading hours sell off, or maybe it just kind of continues higher and then fill this gap at 318, 319 and then start pulling back, right? Like this. We start pulling back, then you're gonna see this oscillator go up a little bit and then start pulling back like that. And then that's gonna be forming lower high on the oscillator while the price has formed higher high. With that bearish divergence, we may see this thing coming back down, even retest that 308, 307. That my mid to long-term moving average. That will be the best case scenario for the bears going into tomorrow and next day, right? So I've given you both scenarios, what could potentially happen. Right now, buyers have the momentum. Only way bears can do any kind of damage is some kind of shenanigan sell-off. But as far as the sentiment is concerned, we're bullish. We're bullish in the short term, neutral to bullish in the midterm, bullish in the long term. So bears will need some kind of shenanigan sell-off, some shenanigan selling event going into tomorrow, early trading hours, and avoid buyers gapping it up at 319. If buyers gap at 319, we're going to 323. I think bears still got something if they can somehow protect this gap. But sooner or later, this thing, yeah, there's a big gap down. Buyers been just little by little been feeling that gap. So this isn't a big weapon for the bears. Sooner or later, buyers gonna go up and fill it. It's just a matter of time. Sooner or later, it's not gonna take too long. It's not gonna take too long before buyers go and fill that gap. That gap's already dying. That gap is already dying. So I don't think bears should rely on that too much. Best bet for the bears will be seeing some kind of bearish divergence that could potentially get this market to come down to retest some of these moving averages, right? So that's what I see, and that's kind of what's going on today. And just to follow up from what happened over the weekend or Friday price session, we've already dived in on Friday on that video. We extensively covered this and why Friday's action was crucial for the buyers. And this is the reason why, despite the fact that we saw a little bit of, micro-term selling pressure on Friday, Monday, we just gapped it right over. Because there's a momentum. There's that bullish momentum going on. Once they get that momentum, we don't know where the top is. So we want to continue to give benefit of the doubt to the buyers. And each day tomorrow, we'll get the information from the market, then we can have to forecast a little further. And that's how we're going to manage our portfolio and trying to benefit, right, from this fluctuations, right? So come back for you guys tomorrow night, and if I see something with my oscillator, maybe a cross back down or something, like some shenanigan, whipsaws or something like this thing crossing backing down or something like that, I will tweet things out. You can follow me at 2K Kim on Twitter and stock twits. I do tweet more on Twitter, so just keep that in mind. You guys enjoy your evening. Good luck trading tomorrow.